It was 11:47 on a Tuesday night, the kind of night that smells like old coffee and cold asphalt, the kind of night where nothing is supposed to happen, and yet. A black sedan sits on the shoulder of Route 9, hazard lights blinking. 1-2, 1-2. The slow pulse of a car that has given up but its driver hasn't. Then, a second vehicle. No lights, no siren, just the quiet crunch of gravel and a door swinging open. A man steps out. He moves like someone who has never once considered that the world might push back. Shoulders forward, chin up. The walk of a man who has spent 22 years being right by default. He reaches the window. 2 knuckles. Not a knock. A summons. The glass rolls down. And he says 4 words. 4 words that will end a career. Open 11 sealed files and prove something that institutions have tried to bury for 2 decades. He says, "Do you know me?" Now, stop right there. Because those 4 words are everything. They are not a greeting. They are not curiosity. They are a test. A power test. The kind that only makes sense if you have spent your entire career walking into situations where the answer was always yes, sir. Of course, whatever you need. But tonight, on this road, the answer is different. And that difference will change everything. My name is not important. What is important is this story. And to understand it, really understand it, you have to meet 2 men. The first man is James Okafor, 34, born in Lagos, raised in Trenton. He runs a logistics consulting firm. Nothing flashy. He moves freight schedules for mid-sized companies who can't afford their own supply chain department. He drives a 2018 Accord. He has no criminal record, not one unpaid parking ticket. On this particular Tuesday, his car stalls on Route 9 coming home from a client meeting. Sensor issue, already had an appointment to fix it that weekend. He pulls to the shoulder, turns on his hazards, calls roadside assistance, is told 40 minutes. He does everything right, every single thing, and it will still not be enough. The second man is Dale Harmon, 51, son of a deputy, grandson of a man who wore a uniform in an era when the uniform was the last word on everything. Dale joined law enforcement in 2001. His early supervisors called him capable, driven, a self-starter. They also used the word difficult. But that word was always 3 paragraphs deep. Buried under praise, buried under numbers, buried under the institutional logic that says a man's results can carry his worst qualities, as long as those qualities don't cost the department anything yet. By 2007, first complaint, a motorist, stopped without cause, detained 40 minutes. When he asked why, Harmon looked at him with the blankness of a man who doesn't believe he owes explanations, and said nothing. Internal investigation. Result. Unsubstantiated. That word, unsubstantiated. Learn it, because it is the word that protected Dale Harmon for 15 more years. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means we chose not to confirm it did. And Dale Harmon, smart enough to understand the system, not wise enough to fear it, walked away from that first complaint with a lesson. The badge is not just authority. In the right department, with the right culture, the badge is armor. He carried that lesson like a second weapon. 4 departments, 3 counties, 11 complaints, transfers that were called reassignments, accusations that were called unsubstantiated, a female colleague who reported him for falsifying a stop report. He told her, on record, "Nobody is going to believe you over me. I've been here longer." She left. He stayed. And in 2019, Dale Harmon was promoted. Gold shield. Detective. The badge in the jacket pocket instead of the hip holster. 3 colleagues later said he referenced it in almost every disagreement after that, as if the gold had settled the question of who he was, permanently and in his favor. Now here is what I want you to feel in the next part of this story. Not just hear, feel. Because what happens on Route 9 is not just an incident. It is the slow, inevitable collision of 2 completely different understandings of what reality is. Harmon pulls over behind James's stalled Accord. Off-duty, no call number, no dispatcher, no assignment. He pulls over because in his private theater of the world, A stalled car on a county road is not a situation requiring help. It is an opportunity. James hears the gravel, sees the SUV in his mirror. No markings, no lights. Here is what he does next. And pay attention because this is the part that changes everything. He reaches into the glove compartment, slowly, deliberately, places his wallet and registration on the dashboard, visible. Then he takes his phone, places it on the center console, screen up. He presses record. James has a dash cam, front and rear, both triggered automatically when the engine cut. But the phone captures something the dash cam cannot. Close-range audio, every word, every breath, every shift in tone. The window goes down. Do you know me? James blinks. I'm sorry? The voice drops, quieter, and therefore more dangerous. Do you know who I am? James says honestly, no, sir. Should I? 4 seconds of silence. You have to understand what those 4 seconds mean. Harmon's entire career, 22 years of stops, detentions, complaints that went nowhere, had trained him to expect one thing at this moment. A lowered gaze, a softened voice, the body language of someone who understands that the person outside their window holds all the cards. James's answer produced none of that. And in the psychology of unearned authority, honest confusion from the person across from you is the most disorienting thing possible. Because if they are not afraid, the badge is not working. Step out of the vehicle. May I ask why, sir? I have roadside assistance coming, my car stalled, step out. And James says, calmly, specifically with the precision of a man who has prepared for exactly this situation his entire adult life, I'm happy to cooperate. Can you please identify yourself and tell me what this is regarding? Polite, legal, exact. But to Harmon's ears, a challenge. You can hear it in the audio. The catch in his breath, the scrape of his shoes on gravel, a man squaring his stance, and his voice when it returns is tighter. Not louder, tighter. The way a fist is different from an open hand. I'm not going to ask you again. James steps out. Dress shirt, slacks, tie loosened at the collar, hands up immediately, palms visible, unhurried. A gesture that is simultaneously voluntary and necessary. And the fact that it is necessary on a public road, to a man in plain clothes with no identification offered, that fact hangs in the November air like something with real weight. Harmon looks at him, and here is where it becomes clinical. He does not look at James's hands, does not look at the wallet on the dashboard, does not look at the phone on the console, the little red recording dot invisible in the shadow of the interior. He looks at James's face. He is sorting, categorizing, the kind of instantaneous social calculation that men like Harmon perform without examination and without mercy. What he sees does not make him careful, it makes him confident. You got ID? Yes, sir. It's on the dashboard. I put it there when I saw you get out. Harmon ignores this entirely. Give it to me. James retrieves his license, hands it over. Harmon holds it. Not quickly, the way you check ID. Slowly, the way you hold something to let the other person know you're holding it. Okafor, he says. And he says it correctly, which means he has heard that name before, in rooms where names like that were said a particular way. Yes, sir. Where you coming from? Client meeting. 40 minutes east in Clarendon. Late for a business meeting. It ran long. Another pause. The cold. The blinking hazards. And then Harmon reaches into his jacket. James's spine tightens. A mammalian response. Involuntary. But what comes out is a badge case. Harmon holds it up. Low, at chest height. Tilted slightly downward. The way you show something to someone you have already decided is beneath you. Detective Harmon. Millhaven County. You got a problem with being stopped? No, sir. Sounds like you got a problem. I asked for identification. That's not a problem. That's a question. The veins on Harmon's neck throb. The red flush of 22 years of unchecked authority climbing above his collar. And then his voice drops to something almost gentle, which is more frightening than shouting, because gentle means he has stopped performing anger and started performing control. You're gonna want to be very careful right now. You understand what I'm saying to you?" James looks at him, and James, quiet, patient, 34-year-old James Okafor who documents and remembers and waits, says this, in a voice so level it is almost surreal. "Detective Harmon, I haven't broken any laws. My car stalled. Roadside assistance is on the way. I've provided my identification voluntarily. With respect, am I being detained or am I free to go? Every person in this country has the right to ask that question, and every person in this country should hear what Harmon says next, because it is the answer that undoes him. He says, on the grounds that I said so, 22 years, 4 counties, 11 complaints, 1 gold badge, and it all comes down to 6 words with 0 legal weight, held up by nothing but the long habit of never being challenged. 6 words that a phone on a center console records in perfect fidelity. What happens next moves fast. Harmon demands James open the trunk. James asks for a warrant. Harmon says he doesn't need one. James says quietly, "I believe you do, sir." Harmon steps closer, not violently, strategically. The distance that communicates, "I am the boundary here, and you will respect it." "You a lawyer?" "No, sir." "Then don't tell me about warrants." James does not open the trunk, and Harmon, an off-duty, no call number, no record of this stop anywhere in the county system. Harmon reaches out and takes James by the arm. Not a strike, a grip, muscle memory. The grip he has used so many times it has become automatic. James does not resist. He goes completely still, body, face, voice, with the practiced composure of a man who knows exactly what this moment means and exactly what it will need to prove later. And he says, "Detective Harmon, you are not in uniform. You are not in a marked vehicle. I have not been told the grounds for this stop, and I want you to know this interaction is being recorded." Harmon stops. For the first time since he left his car, he stops, his hand still on James's arm, his breathing audible, short, through the nose. The sound of a man whose internal story has just met a fact it was not prepared for. He looks at the car. He looks at the console. He sees the phone. "Give me that." "No, sir. I have the right to record this. This is a police investigation." "Into what, sir?" "Give me the phone." "I will not. Taking this phone without consent or a warrant is an unlawful seizure." 20 meters up the road, Margaret Finch, 71 years old, retired schoolteacher, blue cardigan, 32 years of zero patience for people who confuse authority with decency. Margaret Finch is on the phone with 911. She says, "There's a man in plain clothes detaining a black man on Route 9. He's trying to take his phone. I don't know if he's a real officer. The man being stopped hasn't done anything. Please send someone." And then, in the audio, a new sound. Distant but approaching. A county dispatch siren. Maybe 2 miles out. Harmon hears it, and something crosses his face that Margaret Finch later describes as the first honest expression she saw from him all night. She calls it the look of a man who remembered something he had forgotten. The marked unit arrives at 11:59 p.m. Carla Medina, 12 years. Troy Watts, 4 years. Responding to a 911 call about an unidentified man detaining a motorist. They do not know Harmon is on scene. Their dashcam captures everything the moment they pull in behind his SUV. What they see, hazards on, a man in dress clothes, hands visible, posture calm, and another man in civilian clothing standing too close, one hand extended, unmistakably confrontational. Medina steps out. Millhaven County Sheriff. "What's going on here?" Harmon turns, reaches into his jacket, produces the badge. "Detective Harmon, I'm on the job." And then Medina, who knows that name, who has heard it in specific contexts, who has watched colleagues leave while Harmon stayed, says something a deputy does not typically say to a detective. "Badge number, sir?" Harmon gives it. She radios it in. She turns to James. "Sir, are you all right?" James hands her his license and says, "I have audio and video of this entire interaction. My hazards were on. My car stalled. I called roadside assistance. This gentleman, And he uses the word gentleman with a flatness that is more precise than any insult. This gentleman has been detaining me for 12 minutes without cause, without identifying himself until I asked, and has attempted to take my phone. Medina looks at Harmon. The suspect was behaving suspiciously. Watts, 4 years in, looking between the two men and says quietly, "Sir, he's in a stalled vehicle with his hazards on." Harmon says, "There was reason to believe." Medina says, "Sir, do you have a call number for this stop?" "I was passing. Used my discretion." "Are you on duty? Off duty? Are you aware that off-duty stops in non-emergency situations?" "I know the protocol, deputy." The way he says deputy, that word, weaponized by rank. A reflex. So deep in his operating system he doesn't even notice he's doing it. In front of 2 dash cams. In front of 2 witnesses. In front of a phone. In front of a woman with a camera 20 meters up the road. The arrogance is still running the program even now, even here. The roadside truck arrives 12 minutes later. Dennis, 16 years in the business, seen everything, asks no questions about the 2 county vehicles and the man in a dress shirt on the shoulder. Fixes the sensor in 8 minutes. James thanks the deputies. Thanks, Dennis. Gets in his car. He drives home. He uploads everything, audio, dash cam front and rear, to a secure cloud account before he is even out of his own driveway. He goes to sleep. He is, by every account, remarkably composed for a man who just spent 45 minutes being reminded that doing everything right is sometimes still not enough. The next morning, attorney. 3 days later, formal complaint to Internal Affairs. 11 minutes and 47 seconds of audio. Full dashcam footage. Margaret Finch's contact information. Unlawful detention. Attempt to seize a recording device. Failure to identify. Inappropriate off-duty conduct. Conduct unbecoming a sworn officer. Internal Affairs opens the case within 48 hours. They pull the file. All 11 prior complaints, sitting there preserved, documented, and for 22 years, unanswered. One investigator speaking on background says, "The file wasn't a surprise. The file was a map. It told us exactly where he had been and exactly why he kept moving. The only surprising thing was that no one had followed the map until now. 3 prior complainants are re-interviewed. 2 corroborate the patterns. The colleague who had transferred years ago, she goes on record. Harmon is placed on administrative leave. His attorney issues a statement. Detective Harmon maintains his actions were legal and within protocol. The department issues 38 words containing the phrases commitment to accountability and thorough review, which in the grammar of institutional response means exactly nothing and costs exactly nothing. Margaret Finch is interviewed by a local journalist. She sits down, folds her hands, and says, "I stopped because I was frightened for that young man. And then I stopped being frightened because I could see he was the only one on that road who was actually in control of himself." Within 4 months, Harmon resigns. No apology. No statement addressing James Okafor by name. No public moment where he uses the 3 words that the situation required. "I was wrong." The badge is surrendered. The file, 12 complaints now, goes to the county attorney's office. The case remains open. So here is the question. Not how he got away with it for so long. That answer is depressingly simple. He got away with it because the system found it easier to move him than to stop him. The deeper question is what he told himself every single day to make the story hold, because no one walks through life believing they are the villain. That is not how human psychology works. Harmon had a narrative, an experienced man, a complicated world, a job that soft people didn't understand and ungrateful people didn't appreciate. He wasn't corrupt in his own account, he was old school. And that is the most dangerous place a person in power can live, inside a story that has never been seriously challenged. James Okafor didn't beat him with force. He didn't overpower him. He didn't humiliate him. He simply refused, at every single step, to play the role Harmon's story required. He didn't become afraid on cue. He didn't mistake volume for authority. He didn't confuse a badge with a verdict. And in that refusal, quiet, precise, documented, He dismantled 22 years of a man's operating system in 45 minutes on a county road. But I owe you the honest version of this ending. James had to know his rights because it was not safe to be ignorant of them. He had to record the encounter because his word alone might not have been enough. He had to be perfectly calibrated, emotionally, legally, because the margin available to him was always narrower than the margin available to the man who stopped him. He did everything right, and it still cost him 45 minutes in the cold. Justice arrived, but it didn't arrive fast, and it didn't arrive free. There is a philosopher named Simone Weil who wrote that power has the capacity to transform a human being into a thing. She meant the person receiving the force of power. But I think she also meant, without knowing it, the person who wields it without accountability. Because what is Dale Harmon at the end of all this? Not a monster. Something more ordinary and more dangerous than a monster. A man given more power than he had the character to carry, inside a system that valued his productivity over its own integrity, for long enough that the gap between who he was and who he believed himself to be became, in his own mind, invisible. That gap is what this story is actually about. It exists in every institution, every office, every organization where someone has been given authority over other people and not been asked, seriously, regularly, how they use it. And here is where I leave you. Not with Harmon, not with the county, not with the system, with you. Is there anywhere in your life and where any relationship, any role, any small corner of daily authority, where your version of events has gone unchallenged long enough that you have stopped asking whether it is true? That question cannot be answered by a complaint process, cannot be answered by a resignation, cannot be answered by a file transferred to a county attorney's office. It can only be answered by you. The gold badge is a symbol. What it symbolizes depends entirely on the character of the person carrying it. And character is not decided in the moment of promotion. It is decided in every small moment before that, in every complaint dismissed, in every voice that went unheard, in every night a man drove home certain that the question, "Am I wrong?" was beneath him, until the night it wasn't, until a phone was lying on a center console screen up, and the recording dot was red, and every word, every single word, was already saved.